we talk to many older farmers who are like, nobody wants my farm. I should just sell it. Because they have no idea that there are lots of farmers that are first generation farmers. They're not inheriting land. They are learning about agriculture and sustainability and want to bring that back to our local economies and are struggling to find places to do that. And there's a mismatch because many of the older generation are really want that land to be continued to farm. So there's a lot of dynamics at play here.
One, two, three, four.
You are listening to Granted Goodness, the show where we interview New Hampshire people making the world a better place. My name is Andy DeMeo, and today's episode was recorded at the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship in Keene, New Hampshire. My guests today are Shemariah Blum-Evans and Rachel Bryce from the organization Land for Good, where they help new and young farmers expand and secure their access to farmland across New England. We talk about the origins of Land for Good, how the two of them got involved in the work, why legacy and turnover matters in farming, what we all stand to gain from a more dynamic agricultural system, and why we shouldn't see land access as zero-sum. All that and many other things on this episode of Granted Goodness. I hope you enjoy it. Shema and Rachel, welcome to Granted Goodness.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on. When I learned about your organization and what it did, I feel this way about many places, but yours in particular, I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing that I've ever heard of in my life. And you're an organization with, national impact, real impact. What could be more impactful than, helping new and young farmers get access to land, right? And to, build their dreams, build their businesses, do all these things and that we have you here in Keene, New Hampshire. It's really, really cool. Anyway, so I always like to start these. Could each of you share a little bit about your relationship with New Hampshire? Tell me about, are you from the Granite State? Do you live around here? What do you like about it? Give me the story.
Well, I moved to New Hampshire in 2017, actually. I was living in Central Texas and moved up here to pursue graduate school.
Welcome.
Thank you. I love it. I live in Walpole, so it's just up the hill from Keene. It's about 20 minutes away from downtown Keene.
Yeah.
And I like to do all the things that people in New Hampshire tend to like to do. I like to hike. It's really beautiful here. All my neighbors are really friendly.
Yeah.
But I joined Land for Good about 3 years ago. So that's a big plus for me to have that resource here.
When did you know that you wanted to stay in New Hampshire, after moving here?
Well, when I first moved to pursue my master's, I thought I would go back to Texas after I finished. Mm-hmm. So I finished in 2019, and then I decided instead I would pursue my my PhD. So that's what I'm working on now, and now I have a full-time job at Land for Good. So, and I planted some apple trees and I have some honeybees. So it seems like I've got some roots here now.
You're a beekeeper.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I love that. Wait, I want to know what's your PhD in?
So my
you
PhD,
can't not ask.
Sure. And every doctoral student likes to talk about the research. My PhD is in environmental studies, but I research nonprofit sustainability to turbulent times. So specifically, I've been trying to understand how food sovereignty organizations in the Northeast survived COVID.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We could have a whole
but we're here to talk about Land for Good.
No,
though,
I know.
So.
I might have a whole other episode when you finish. I might hold you to that. When you finish your PhD, I want it you're going to talk about your thesis on the show.
I'm happy to.
I would actually really like that because that's a very cool thing. How about you, Shema?
So don't tell anybody, but I live in Massachusetts.
Okay, hold on. That's it. This is over. We're stopping. Just kidding.
I grew up in Maine.
Yeah.
And I made my way to Massachusetts for different reasons, and it was sort of a compromise between my husband's family's in Texas, my family's in Maine, so Massachusetts ended up being the middle.
That's right.
But I'm only an hour from Keene, and it's been really great having Keene be the kind of center for our organization.
Yeah.
Because Land for Good works across the 6 New England states. And from the beginning, we established the organization here in New Hampshire, feeling like it was a really central location to support the work that we were going to do across the region.
Yeah. So both of you have like some serious Texas background.
We do. It's funny.
My wife's family's from Texas as well. You know, they say you can take the girl out of Texas, but you know, not take the Texas out of the girl. And that's very true. Every once in a while, she'll be saying something, and the accent will come back out, and it's like, okay. The word internet in particular, she struggles. She says internet. I don't know. But yeah, no, that's really cool. So you joined Land for Good 3 years ago, and how long have you been with the organization?
Over 6 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long has Land for Good been around?
We're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year.
Wow.
So 20 years.
Do you have any sense, like I'm sure that the nature of the work has changed since you joined, but I would love to hear if you have any opinions on actually, scrap that. We'll get there. Mm-hmm. Take a step back. Could you, for the listeners, define what is Land for Good? What does it do? Because I know, but they need to know.
Sure. So we're a regional nonprofit. We work on the ground in the 6 New England states, and then we support projects and collaborate nationwide. So our subject area is farmland access, tenure, and transfer. So we are helping farmers and landowners figure out how to make land available to future farmers. And we do that through education, like workshops and longer trainings, and we also do one-on-one technical assistance, working with individuals to think about what are their goals, how are they going to create a search strategy, how are they going to find a farmer for their land, how are they going to think about passing on a farm business that they're operating. And then we also do research and create a lot of resources that are used nationwide by other organizations that are trying to do this work. Mm-hmm. And we have a land linking website where folks can post properties that they have available, and also farmers can put up their profile of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's one of the tools we use to help connect folks to make those matches.
Yeah.
So that we're keeping agricultural land as active working farmland.
Wow. What did this work look like when, this organization was started, right? Like, how has the landscape, pun intended, changed, I guess, since 2000 or so?
So 20 years ago, our founder, Kathy Roof, she's still with us as our senior advisor. She started Land for Good specifically working in succession cases. Mm-hmm. And so trying to help farmers who were exiting, retiring, work through their transfer plans and to make sure that their farm stayed in active agriculture. So that's still a big part of what we do, mm-hmm. but we quickly thereafter realized that if we want to deal with the whole system of farmland access, we also need to be attending to the needs of people who are trying to get on land or to grow their businesses on land.
Yeah.
And I would say specifically in the past 5 years, the cost of land has increased dramatically, which is one of the biggest struggles that entering farmers face in terms of getting access to land. But farm succession cases have always been complex and complicated and often take years. So I would say that's sort of the very quick, high-level version of how we started and some of the main things that are challenging. I don't know if you want to add on to any of that.
Well, some of the nuance that I would add is that we have an aging farming population.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets to your comment about things have changed and less people are doing agriculture.
Yeah.
And so we talk to many older farmers who are like, nobody wants my farm. I should just sell it. Because they have no idea that there are lots of farmers that are first generation farmers. They're not inheriting land. They are learning about agriculture and sustainability and want to bring that back to our local economies and are struggling to find places to do that. And there's a mismatch because many of the older generation are really want that land to be continued to farm.
Yeah.
And the economics have been such that they don't understand why other people might want to get into farming, or they may need assistance in their own retirement and need to make quite a bit of money in terms of passing along the farm.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of dynamics at play here.
Yeah.
And I think the other challenges have been climate change.
Sure.
We're seeing a number of folks interested in moving to New England, seeing this as a refuge for climate change concerns, like less drought, we'll get more rain here,
Yeah.
less flooding pressure. So a variety of reasons. We thought we were safe from wildfires until last year. So we've had a number of people in recent years thinking about climate change concerns also.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on one of the things you said where you mentioned that many of the entering farmers are first generation, which means they don't have any of the face-to-face network connections. And so they might not have the chance to know if a farm is coming available or might be available in the next few years because they're not connected in the agricultural community like somebody who is maybe a third generation farmer with,
Yeah.
family might know.
Another question I kind of wanted to dig into, what do you think makes yours a really, really unique organization? And, do you collaborate with other organizations on these issues?
What makes us unique is that we were one of the very first organizations that were kind of taking up this issue. And we are the only organization that we're aware of nationwide that is really focused, this is our mission, is the farmland access and transfer.
Wow.
Whereas other organizations, it might be a piece of what they do. And so because of that, we're unique in how detailed we can get into the topic and how we can share that out with others. We're also unique in the fact that we're working across 6 states, so
Yeah.
we can take information that we're learning in Rhode Island about a cool new project and bring it back here to New Hampshire and share that with our colleagues here. And vice versa, things that we're trying out here in New Hampshire, we can take to other places, both around the region and share with partners nationwide.
Yeah.
And we do work a lot with collaborators, many other nonprofits, also university extensions, towns and government officials that reach out. Land trusts are a big partner as well. And because of our niche topic, we really need to work with partners because a
Yeah.
farmer who comes to us may not only need land, they're going to need finance. A big chunk of our staff are also farmers, so
Yeah.
we're able to have our farmer hat on while
Right.
we're talking to them about what you might need for land, but that's not our expertise. And so we work with a lot of other farmer support organizations to get them all of the resources that they will need.
Yeah.
So we have many partners particularly in the 6 states,
Yeah.
that will help round out that support that they would need, either for their thinking about farmland transfer. They may need attorneys and financial advisors. So we also network and try and build out those professionals to bring into situations as well.
Yeah.
And then our national collaborations are other nonprofits primarily that are interested in bringing this type of work to their region, because New England is ahead of the curve in some ways of other areas of the country of thinking this way and what the needs on the ground are for farmland access and how to help the transferring generation.
A question I wanted to ask you too as well, and I'm going to read it because I wrote it, and I want to make sure I get the wording right. I think a lot of people, they view land access as a thorny issue because fundamentally there's only so much of it, right? Which makes it tempting to view it as a zero-sum game. For you to have more land, I must have less. What would you say to someone who thinks in those terms, right? I feel like your work is very cooperative. It's about possibility. It's maybe even about sharing or passing down a lineage of, relationship with land. How do you get away from the fact that there's a limited amount of land in the world, and how do you approach that?
it's sort of a ragged thought, and I think it does depend.
Ragged thoughts, welcome to.
Yeah, I think it does depend some on who we're talking to, but another sort of branch of our work includes advocacy, and advocacy for the needs of the farming community, and trying to advocate for and educate about policies that support equitable farmland access. And I think it's important not to shy away from the reality that when farmland is lost,
Right.
that to development specifically, that it is gone from agriculture. And so, as Shema said, leaning into the importance of and the benefits of keeping that land in active agriculture.
Right.
And it is kind of nice and exciting to think about the growing interest in finding creative, innovative ways to share land.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, gets at the thing you were asking of, is it really true that if you have some land, that means I have to have less land?
Right.
Well, not necessarily if we're finding ways to share it. So it's like that combination of knowing who you're talking to and advocating for the needs of farmers, because it's not just about does this farmer have a business? It's
Right.
also about, do we get to eat food?
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes somehow forget that we wouldn't have access to grocery stores. We wouldn't have access to farmers markets. We wouldn't have dinner on our table if we didn't have farmers who were farming on
Right.
farmland. And so in order for that to happen, we have to keep the land in active agriculture as much as we can.
It really depends on who we're talking to.
Sure.
And I think we can get a sense of that when we're talking with folks, of what their goals and interests are, and have a conversation from that point. So for some people, they might be able to recognize that land is not a commodity that we should divide and sell, and that we're all working to keep this working farmland available for the greater good of the community.
Yeah.
And for some people, it is very cut and dry. This is my property line, and this is what I want to do. And so with folks that are more cut and dry, this is what I have to offer. We may need to take sort of a look at what is that value and what can you offer.
Right.
But talking with them about the needs of keeping the land in working agriculture, in terms of that there are folks looking for land that could really use a fresh start and need a place to be.
Yeah.
The community benefit of that, having fresh food, of having open space, of having natural resource and climate resilience. All of these same arguments or concerns that we might bring up, and then sharing what are options, what that would look like. They can retain ownership of the land and still make it available in a variety of agreements
Yeah.
and leases. They can have one person on that land. They could have multiple. And we have worked with folks that want to come together and share land, and come up with agreements about sharing infrastructure on the land to make costs more affordable. And also, official cooperatives have also formed. So it can take a variety of ways, depending a variety of models, depending on what folks are interested in.
Yeah.
So we try to present as an organization, here's a variety of ways, and
Right.
we're going to have to look at all of these different tools.
Yeah.
And anywhere we can move
Yeah.
the needle a little bit towards making sure this land is still available and
Right.
farmers are getting access to it. It's going to take planting some seeds here and there of changing people's opinions and ideas.
That's
We're
right.
not going to change perspectives overnight.
Yeah.
But meeting people where they're at and working with those that are interested in thinking about things a little differently and what the options are.
Gardening metaphors are very welcome in this conversation.
Yeah, we're sprinkling them in.
Use all of them. The absolute most fundamental need, right? Like to eat. We need, like, there's no getting around that. But as you said, I mean, this isn't even my line of work, but I can tell you, like, just culturally, as a 29 Zillennial or whatever. There's whole video games now that people have built and designed. Have you heard of this? Stardew Valley? You know Stardew Valley? I'm not surprised by that. But it's a game that's like this fantasy, but you inherit a bunch of land from like a random family member, and then you move to this town in the middle of nowhere and you like start a farm and you like manage the crops and money and you build relationships, and like it sounds silly as a thing to like make a virtual experience out of, but like it's a very popular game, particularly for people my age. And I'll just, my truck is a reference to the game. I have a vanity plate that's Junimo, which is a thing from the game. But that's like a silly example, but there is something I think more serious going on than just like, I want a cottage fantasy, right? Of like, I think for people of all ages, all generations, there is a shared interest in, local food, having a relationship with the people or workers that, produce that food or any product really, who's like, you talk to anybody who doesn't love local stuff, who doesn't love being like, oh, my neighbor built that chair and he grows some carrots and I buy his chicken. Like, people love this stuff, right? And valuing that is important. There's more to like, I don't know, life than just like money and getting cheap groceries. And I feel like more people are feeling that way. You guys made a really, really cool video that was kind of like an impact video, and I watched it and that was amazing. And I'm going to link it in the show notes for people. But the fact that like you have skin in the game, you're not just like, not that you couldn't help if, you didn't, like if there weren't any farmers on your staff, but it is a different relationship. I kind of feel like, this matters to me too. I'm personally invested in it. So it's more than just you're a client or a prospect of mine, right?
It really does take a team. We couldn't do this work without our partners, without relationships with partners. And I'm going to take advantage of your show to actually make a plug. You mentioned
plug away.
Yeah, you mentioned the need for a more like a continually growing and robust network of service providers. And so if you have listeners, or if you are connected to, or if your listeners are connected to, especially attorneys who are interested in being active in the agricultural space, that's a group of folks we're actively looking to continue to build bridges with. We have in the past and continue to offer education for service providers so they can serve the agricultural community better. And we need those folks. So if you or any of your listeners or any of those folks know, definitely connect them to us, because I think we would like to do some more of that work.
I don't know how many lawyers listen to Granite Goodness, but I hope they all do and they come and want to help. Could you share some favorite like stories or outcomes when you think of like, man, I love working at Land for Good because I got to see X happen? Like what is that in your head?
For the past 3 years, I was leading a course called Acquiring Your Farm, specifically for farm seekers. And it was a 6-week course covering all different topics, from how do you assess whether a particular farm property is good for your business, how do you figure out whether you know enough about your own finances to really pursue these things. And I had an email in one of the feedback forms from a participant of that course who said, thanks to what I learned in this course, I have found a greenhouse that fits my business plan perfectly, and I knew how to write a lease because of what I learned in the course, and so I got to write a lease and get into this farm. And so that was just really cool for me personally. And then I heard from one of our field agents that they had been working with an urban farm, and that particular farmer next door to where they had been doing their urban farming, there was another property that the owner of the property was an older gentleman, and his daughter was interested in potentially making some of that land available to the urban farm.
Yeah.
And so our field agent was able to help them through all those lease negotiations, which enabled that farm to grow into the adjacent space. So those are just two stories that just happened just in the past few years when I've been at Land for Good, and they're both sort of exciting because I get to hear about people who actually get to move their farm business forward,
Yeah.
and who get to, because of help that we've provided or the connections that they found through us, have been able to achieve some of their farmland access goals.
Yeah.
So that's exciting for me.
I mean, that's a life change. You can't even. What's more life changing than that?
We have a few more of those stories on our website.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a chance to link listeners to
There totally
additional
is.
things.
We'll put it all in the show notes. Anything you want.
Yeah. So we have several different farmer stories on the website that more examples like this, which are great to hear from directly. And then I would just lift up. We're working on a new publication that folks in the Midwest reach out to us, partners that we've partnered with before, and from the Land Connection, and we're really feeling like there wasn't a resource to show folks how to purchase a farm. There's lots about how to purchase real estate, and
Yeah.
there's lots about, we have developed over the years a number of things about leasing farmland. And so there was kind of disparate information and not a concrete go-to resource for folks that wanted to purchase a farm about what to think about. And so this is an example of how we heard from a number of different people of a need,
Yeah.
and we were able to come together with a partner and develop that resource, which will be available early next year. And you look like you're ready to ask.
No,
a
I
question.
don't want to cut you out. I'm just curious. Could you give us like a really high level, like what do people need to know if they want to purchase farmland? Like how is it different from buying just a house or something?
Sure. So there's a lot of similarities to buying a house, and what is all that process? And we find that some of the younger farmers that we're working with, have never approached buying a house either. So you're adding that whole cumbersome process on
Right.
top of assessing the farmland. Is it really going to offer what you need it to? Assessing any infrastructure that may or may not be on the property. What are the zoning or other legalities for what you want to do
Yeah.
on that property, and does it support it? Considering the finances and whether it will be supported through your business plan to actually finance this opportunity.
Yeah.
And looking at where are financial opportunities for getting financing or grants. So those are some of the things.
So this would be an inappropriate time to ask for your advice about like my plan to grow bananas. Because I have a small farm in Tamworth, and it's always been my dream to build like a geothermal greenhouse, like set into the ground so that you can do it in all seasons and like, I don't know, just grow something crazy like citrus. I don't know how realistic that is or isn't, but
I think folks are doing it.
yeah, so they're doing it in the Dakotas. I've seen people do all kinds of stuff. Rachel looks like she wants to say something.
There is. Well, I can't. It's like at the tip of my brain. But there's a farmer in New Hampshire.
Really?
Who grows citrus and also ginger and turmeric in heated greenhouses year round. They were growing avocados, but had trouble with pollination, so now they're not growing avocados. But in New Hampshire they are.
Yeah.
So I'll find that name and
Send them to me. I love that though. Well, what a world of possibility, That's what I like about your work, is I feel like you work with all these people, and I feel like your org is the definition of how do we get to yes? How do we get to, you have a specific vision in mind for how you want the succession plan to go, or you have a vision for, the kind of land you want to get, the kind of farming you want to do. Let's get to yes. Let's find you a partner. Let's get it done.
I'm thinking about what you were just saying about getting to yes.
Sure.
And making connections. And that is certainly a goal. And what we try to be is very realistic with folks
Yeah.
when they come to us. And also very realistic about timeline.
Yeah.
These things take many years.
Yeah.
We have one of our first farm succession clients. We're still working with him.
Wow.
20 years later, because it's a process, and there are certain goals along the way that folks want to think about, take action on, and then there may be points of pause and then additional pieces to take care of.
Yeah.
And it's not an overnight process, either getting on the farm or deciding to exit.
Right.
And it takes persistence when you're looking for your next opportunity.
Right.
And it can take a lot of social connections, as we talked about before. So partnerships and persistence are really key to making it all come together. And we try to give people a realistic take on what it is they want to do,
Right.
and say, okay, great, but have you thought about this? And do you want to consider these options?
Killing my banana dreams. Right now.
No, I think we are not killing your banana dreams, because I'm pretty sure folks in New Hampshire are already doing it. And it doesn't mean that it's not possible, just
Right.
giving folks a realistic take on what our current landholding system has to offer, current
Yeah.
climate has to offer, financial economy at the moment, and not having folks make mistakes
Right.
that could have been prevented by getting a real advocate or advice to help them think through things. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to caution people about, because we have seen it crash and burn where folks are like, oh no, I don't need a real lease. I'm just going to go for this. Or I'm going to sign this lease that really doesn't give me much security, and I'm going to put in a lot of money to get this new site really working.
Right.
And to have things fall through without thinking through some of those elements of, is this really secure, and is the financial situation good for the long term,
Yeah.
are critical things to consider.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's better to be realistic, right? And that doesn't mean, you can't get it done, but you can imagine a different situation where it's like, yeah, we make all these promises and overtures to everybody, and then a bunch of people just end up disappointed because we told them, you can get your farm of your dreams tomorrow. Do all these things that aren't real. I don't know. But like
Right.
that to me is a sign that, it's like, no, you're quite serious about doing the real work. Because it's like, well, look, this is a landscape. Your success is a function of, the financing available, the connections you have, just what the landscape looks like right now, and a million other things. Mm-hmm. And you can learn about it, and we can help you and see what we can do. Or, you don't have to stake it all on growing bananas. You don't have to do it. I'm deeply in debt for those bananas, by the way. I'm trying it. This is my confessional. I'm in banana debt. If each of you could talk to yourselves, either at the beginning of your time with the organization, like what would you say? What are some of the biggest lessons that you feel like you've learned?
I feel like perhaps I've gone a bit of a circle of, from optimism of like, great, there's going to be concrete answers of how to get people on land that they're not connected to right now.
Yeah.
And these folks are going to want to exit farming, and we're going to match them up, and it's smooth sailing. And I think there is an element of that when we're talking about it in simple terms to folks. That's
Right.
what we're trying to do. And when you go in and deal with it, it's way more complicated,
Yeah.
right? As we've been talking about somewhat. And I think that there is a bit of like the realism set in, maybe even a year in of like,
Right.
oh, right, there's a lot to this.
Yeah.
And now I'm finally catching on like what it is that folks really need to work through this process.
Yeah.
And I would say that I never have felt like a negative, but just maybe catching on to that realistic take on things.
Sure.
And understanding that there are many options that are not going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
And people are going to have to find their own way that meets their goals and accomplishes what they want out of it. And I think we get that misconception when folks come to us initially too, of like, you're going to solve it and it's going to be this one way of doing things.
Right.
And we are really opening doors for people to think about things differently.
Yeah.
And consider what their options are. And I think that most people who join Land for Good on staff, like, there is a bit of a journey to
Sure.
like figuring all of that out, unless you've already been immersed. And I feel like kind of come full circle in terms of being optimistic about like
Yeah.
knowing that there's a variety of options and tools available for folks, and we're not going to solve it overnight. This is a
Yeah.
long-term problem, needs major systematic change for how folks can interact and get on land.
Right.
And we are changing that slowly over time.
Yeah.
And that it's not going to be immediate quick fixes.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking like a little bit like more about what would I tell myself. And so that seems kind of like it's like somewhat like a personal question. And like the first thing that came to my head is it seems kind of like simplistic, but it would be like, try to join the team sooner because I really enjoy it and
Right.
it feels meaningful to me. But there's something that it's like, it's still emerging actually, and I just wonder if I would have started earlier, where would I be in that emergence of the possibilities that happen in partnership with the folks we're connected with in New England and nationally, and just some of the conversations that are starting to happen and ways that people are thinking and being creative. I feel like it's actually my future self who's going to have something to tell my
Sure.
my now self, but that I can sort of see there's this great possibility that is just like, it's almost like moving into 2025, who knows what the world is going to look like, but I know if we're going to get anything done, it's going to be with other people who care about these issues.
Right.
And so I'm very curious to see what's going to emerge out of some of the relationships that we've spent so long building. What are we now going to be doing together? And
Yeah.
so it's not exactly the answer to the question you asked me, but that's when I think about like the future past conversation. I feel like my current self is wondering what the future self would tell me
I love
now.
that. No, that's a better answer than I could have imagined. No one's ever answered. I asked that question sometimes, and no one has answered it like that. No one's ever been like, I'm having that conversation right now with future me, which is just, I like that very much. Which is even, to be really like meta about it, Rachel, the fact that this conversation is being recorded, right? And that you'll be able to, like, we can reflect back on this. We'll have you back on, like both of you, like, in a year or whatever, and then we'll be like, so what happened this year at Land for Good? What's going on? Like, because I like having people back on the show. It's something I want to do more. So that was a perfect answer to the question. Shamayat, you look like you were nudging the mic. No, you're not nudging it. Well, I'm going to make a comment on your answer, Shema. This is kind of a dumb story, but I think about it sometimes, like, and there's many bad metaphors for what this expresses. There's this story of like, it's always an old man. There's this old man on the beach and he's like, there's a bunch of starfish. You know this, yeah. The starfish have all washed up on the beach and he's like tossing them back to the sea so they can live. And then some mean guy walks by and he's like, what are you doing? You'll never save all the starfish. There's too many of them. You'll never make a difference. And then the old gentleman says, well, it made a difference to that one and to that one and to that one, right? And I saw in your web, like, you've placed like hundreds of people, like you've succeeded like hundreds of times in terms of like making the connection for a farm or a succession plan and a person trying to get there, and like, I admire and respect, that you can see the scope of like you probably working in the space see, oh man, I focus on this 100% of the time. I see all the ways in which the system now is failing people on this issue. And that's hard to see. But for each person that you have helped, it's a 100% difference for them, right? And it's a 100% difference all the hundreds of times that you've managed to make it happen, you know, and the fact that you figured out how to do it even one time is like really, really cool. And your engagement with other organizations, you know, sister organizations, regional organizations, and the fact that you're publishing, you know, information on like, oh, here's a missing piece for how to get this done. People should know about how to buy, like that, you know, you're thinking really critically about how do we move the needle on this issue? What can we offer that's unique? Like, I have a lot of respect for that, and I think it's really cool. That's all I have to say. So you like all the other great problem solver people I talk to, you're steeped in the issue, but I feel like if you zoom out a little bit, I mean, listen, talk to any of the people that you've helped get farms. They'll be like, I'm ecstatic right now because of you. Thanks. You know, like, so I always think of the starfish story.
We should do that next time.
Throw starfish in the ocean?
That too, but also get some of the people to join us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be a
fun.
great idea. No, I would love to do that. You know, I like talking to orgs, but you know, talking to like the people that help is a thing that I like to do as well. So yeah, the next time I have you guys on, if you want to bring some like your favorite people, we could even do a whole thing. We could sit at a round table and be like, what was this like for Land for Good? What was this like? Like, there's so many great stories to tell. All right, I would like to hear from each of you. What makes you optimistic about the future of your work?
What we have is each other, ultimately. And there are enough people who are interested in keeping farming alive, whatever it ends up looking like. It's really hard because, like, actually sometimes, if I'm being honest, like, being optimistic is a struggle.
Sure.
Just because I see
Yeah.
how things are and
Right.
I understand how systems work and, like,
Did you know how they could be instead?
well,
Right.
but also, like, our work does have an impact. And also, it's not just us. And there's so many hundreds of organizations who are each helping hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm.
And even if everything gets tossed up in the air, there's still going to be somebody who's got 20 acres and says to two other people who are looking for a place, one wants to raise sheep and somebody else is trying to grow apples, like, those kinds of connections aren't going to stop happening.
Yeah.
And so if what you're asking about is where do I find hope in terms of agriculture, sustainable, ecological agriculture that feeds everybody, where is that going to come from? And that's going to come from the people who care about it.
Yeah.
And so it's maybe more than optimism is hope for me.
Yeah.
And just like knowing that we have succeeded and that there are other people working in this space who also have succeeded. So that's where it comes. That's where it comes for me.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
What she said.
Yeah. That's cheating.
I think what
Shameless.
I would add is
All we have is each other.
all we have
We
is
built
each
the
other.
relationships. It's a lot of momentum.
I think that is all really true. That there is, when the organization got started, this farmland access wasn't a term that anybody had heard about.
Yeah.
And now there are funding programs from USDA to fund specifically that.
Right.
And this is been recognized as a critical need for beginning and young farmers, like their number one barrier to
Yeah.
starting farming. So for that change to happen over 20 years is significant, and we're right in the middle working with lots of other people that are now highlighted this concern.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of energy to make a difference and make changes, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be doing this work and being a resource for others and being a key place to be bringing other people together to make a difference.
Yeah. No, I certainly feel that way. It makes you excited. Like, how many people today are starting their farms with the intention of, I want to have a 10 generation, established 2024, right? So it's like, it's fun to think, what is this landscape going to look like 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100, right? Like, we don't know, but it's exciting. It's exciting to think about.
Well, this was really great, Andy. Thanks for having us on, and we'll have to keep talking another time.
For sure. We got to have round 2 when you finish your PhD, and we'll have you on again, and we'll have some of your do you call them clients? What do we call the people you work with?
We do.
Yeah, we'll have your clients on.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Rachel.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, check out Land for Good. Hey there, thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator and host of Granite Goodness, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.